A single mother employed a maid to assist her, because she was too busy with work. But the maid used the little boy to satisfy her sexual urge. Let's see what happened after she discovered her maid was pregnant. The confrontation. Amara sat tensely on the sofa, her legs crossed but restless. Her fingers laced together so tightly that the veins on the back of her hands stood out. Every breath she took came shallow, uneven. The silence in the living room was unbearable. A silence broken only by the ticking of the wall clock and the muffled hum of the ceiling fan. Sei sat beside her, but not close enough. His jaw was tight. His chest rose and fell heavily, and though he was trying to remain composed, his eyes burned with the kind of anger that came from betrayal. "Call her," he said, his voice low but sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. Amara hesitated, her throat dry. She unlocked her phone with trembling hands and dialed Zainab's number. "Come to the sitting room," she said curtly. Her voice betrayed nothing, but her eyes flickered nervously. Minutes later, Zainab appeared in the doorway, wiping her damp palms on her apron. Her face was pale, lips quivering, eyes darting from Amara to Sei. She could already feel the storm she was about to walk into. Sei rose slowly to his feet, his height towering over her trembling frame. He didn't shout at first. His voice was low, almost trembling with restrained rage. "Zainab, what have you done?" His words carried weight, slicing through the room. "You betrayed this family. You betrayed that boy's innocence. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Zainab's legs buckled beneath her. She dropped to her knees on the tiled floor, her tears rushing freely as she clasped her hands together like a beggar. "I'm sorry. I never meant. I was lonely, and he—" "Don't!" Sei thundered suddenly, his voice echoing so loudly that Amara flinched. His face was red now, his anger no longer contained. "Don't you dare try to justify it. He is a child. A child." Zainab sobbed harder, bowing her head to the floor. The sound of her weeping filled the room. For a long while silence hung thick. The only sounds were her sobs and the hollow beat of the clock on the wall. Sei paced back and forth, running a hand across his face. Then he stopped, turned sharply, and asked with a voice that came out like ice, "How many months gone are you?" Zainab's voice shook. 5 months and 2 weeks. Sei's knees almost gave way. He closed his eyes and exhaled heavily, his chest heaving. "So it's too late to terminate it," he muttered bitterly under his breath. His fists clenched at his side, the veins in his arms rising as though his whole body was ready to erupt. He turned away, pacing again, then stopped abruptly and faced her. "I can't live under the same roof as you anymore. I can't. Not after this. Please," Zainab whispered through her sobs, clutching at his feet. "Please, I beg you. Let me keep this child. I will take care of it. I will not trouble anyone. Just let me have a chance to make things right." Neither Sei nor Amara answered. The air was suffocating, thick with disappointment and grief. Amara's eyes were fixed on the floor, her expression unreadable, while Sei stood like a stone. Heavy, wounded, but resolute. The days that followed were tense and unbearable. The house felt heavier than ever. Even Tamawa, though he didn't fully understand, could sense something was broken. He stayed mostly glued to Amara's side, avoiding Zainab, who lingered in the background like a ghost. Sei spent nights pacing the sitting room long after everyone had gone to bed. Sometimes Amara joined him, sitting silently, the distance between them wider than it had ever been. Finally, after days of silence, he spoke to her one evening. "We can't throw her out on the streets just like that," he said quietly, rubbing his forehead. "But she can't remain here, not with him around. It's not safe. It's not healthy." Amara nodded stiffly, though her eyes carried no sympathy. She had grown cold, her heart hardened against Zainab. Within the week, Sei began searching for a small apartment. Something modest, away from the neighborhood, far enough to give everyone breathing space. He decided he would pay the rent for the first year, furnish it with essentials, and then leave Zainab to build her own life. At the same time, Sei enrolled Tamawa for therapy. The first sessions were agonizing. The boy sat curled in his chair, lips sealed, refusing to open up. But with patience, the child therapist managed to draw him out little by little. Slowly, Tamawa began to talk about the things he had seen and felt. Every word was like a dagger to Sei's heart. Amara, though outwardly strong, wept silently every time they returned from the sessions. She blamed herself over and over, whispering prayers in the dark. Sei, though deeply wounded, bore his pain like a shield. Trying to remain strong for the son he wasn't sure how to protect anymore. The family had been scarred, and nothing would ever be the same again. The separation. 2 weeks later, Zainab's departure finally came. Her few belongings were packed neatly into 2 suitcases. Her belly had already begun to show, and her eyes were swollen from endless nights of crying. She avoided Tamawa's gaze as she walked past his room, afraid she might collapse if she saw him one last time. At the doorway, Amara stood with folded arms. Her expression was torn between anger and pity, but she said nothing. Sei handed Zainab the keys to the modest 1-bedroom flat he had secured for her. "This is your chance to build a new life. Don't waste it," he said sternly, though his voice trembled slightly at the edges. Zainab nodded, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. "Thank you for not throwing me away completely." And just like that, she left. The new routine. Zainab settled into her new home quietly. The apartment was simple: a single bedroom, a small sitting room with a second-hand sofa, and a kitchen with a gas cooker. It was not much, but it was hers. She busied herself with chores, cooking, cleaning, and preparing for the baby. But every so often, she would pause by the window, staring into the empty street, missing the sound of Tamawa's laughter. Back in Amara's house, life took on a strained routine. Sei and Amara visited Zainab occasionally, bringing food and baby supplies, but they never once let Tamawa accompany them. The boy noticed. At night, he would lie in bed, clutching his pillow, whispering Zainab's name into the darkness. He remembered the way she tucked him in, the warmth of her arms when his mother was gone, the stories she whispered to chase away his fears. Now she was gone, and the void was unbearable. "Why can't I go to Auntie Zainab's house?" he asked innocently one evening, his big eyes fixed on Amara. Amara froze, her throat tightening. She forced a weak smile. "Because she has her own baby to think about now, my son. It's better this way." Tamawa lowered his gaze, unsatisfied. He didn't argue. He just curled into his mother's arms. But the embrace no longer gave him the comfort it once did. The shocking meeting. It was a Saturday afternoon when Sei and Amara decided to stop by Zainab's apartment with some food items and baby clothes. The visit was meant to be brief, but when they walked into the small sitting room, they froze. Zainab wasn't alone. Sitting casually on the couch, sipping a bottle of malt, was a man Amara knew too well, a man she had hoped never to see again. Her heart slammed against her chest. Her palms went clammy. The walls of the tiny room seemed to close in on her. It was him, the man from the club, the one-night stand that had turned her life upside down 6 years ago. The man who disappeared the very next morning, never returning her calls. Their eyes met across the room, and for a few seconds, everything went silent. Zainab, oblivious to the storm brewing in Amara's chest, smiled warmly. "Oh, meet my cousin, Kunal. He just came into town and stopped by." Sei extended his hand politely. "You're welcome." Kunal shook his hand, but his eyes flickered briefly toward Amara. The look lasted barely a second, but it was enough to send chills down her spine. Sei noticed sudden stiffness. He turned to her. "Everything okay?" Amara forced a shaky nod, her lips tight. "Yes, I'm fine." But she wasn't. Neither was Kunal. The silence between them screamed of a secret neither wanted to acknowledge. After the visit on their way home, Amara was unusually quiet, staring out the car window as if the world outside could swallow her. Sei glanced at her several times. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked gently. "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. But Sei wasn't convinced. The next day, he went back to Zainab's apartment alone. He sat across from her, his eyes fixed firmly on her face. "Zainab," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Yesterday, I noticed something. The way Amara and your cousin looked at each other. They froze. Like there's history. What's going on?" Zainab shifted uncomfortably, biting her lip. She wanted to protect her cousin's confidence, but the weight of Say's stare was crushing. Finally, she sighed. "Kunal told me that he and Amara, they had a one-night stand. About 6 years ago. He said it was around the same month you and Amara were together too." Say leaned back slowly, his chest tightening. His vision blurred for a moment as the words sank in. 6 years ago. The same month. The same time Tamawa was conceived. Pieces he had ignored all these years suddenly came together. Amara's initial uncertainty about her pregnancy. The hesitation in her voice when she first told him. The way she never gave him a straight answer when he asked if she was sure. His throat went dry. His heart thudded heavily in his chest. "Then," he whispered, almost to himself, his voice cracking, "is Tamawa truly my blood?" After leaving Zainab's apartment, Say lay wide awake in his bed. The ceiling fan above spun in slow, lazy circles, humming with a steady rhythm, but it did nothing to calm the storm raging inside his chest. He tossed to one side, then the other. He sat up, rubbed his face, lay back down again. Sleep refused to come. Could it be true? Could Tamawa not be his? The thought itself was like a dagger twisting in his ribs. His mind refused to rest. It kept replaying old memories like a cruel film reel. He remembered the very first time he held Tamawa in his arms. A tiny, wrinkled baby swaddled in soft cloth, eyes shut tight, lips puckering as if sucking on invisible milk. He remembered staying awake for countless nights, pacing the room with the crying baby in his arms, rocking, humming, whispering lullabies just to keep him calm. He remembered the sacrifices, turning down outings with friends, saving every extra kobo, working long hours, because in his mind he was building a better life for his son. No matter what anyone said, Tamawa was his boy, his laughter, his smile, his very heartbeat. But the doubt was louder than his heartbeat now. It nagged, it whispered, it screamed. But is he really your blood? The next evening, the next day, Sei could hardly focus at work. He signed documents absent-mindedly, stared too long at his computer screen, and jumped whenever his phone buzzed. By evening, he made up his mind. He drove straight to Amara's place earlier than usual, parking outside for a long moment to gather his courage. When she opened the door, her brows lifted in surprise. "You're early. Everything okay?" "Yes," he lied smoothly, forcing a smile. "I came to pick Tamawa. I want to take him to the park. Just father and son time." Amara, already half-dressed for an evening outing, turned back to the mirror and adjusted her earrings. Her voice was casual, distracted. "That's good. He'll love it. Don't stay out too late." Minutes later, Sei held Tamawa's small hand, guiding him to the car. His smile looked steady, but his heart was racing, palms sweaty on the steering wheel. He drove past the neighborhood park, past the familiar ice cream shops, past everything the boy had been expecting. "Daddy, aren't we going to the park?" Tamawa asked, his big curious eyes blinking. "Yes, champ," Sei replied, voice tight. "We'll go soon. First, we just need to make a quick stop." That stop was at a private hospital on the edge of town. Inside, Sei explained quietly to the doctor, his voice barely above a whisper. The man in the white coat nodded knowingly, as if he had heard this kind of request too many times before. The swabs were taken, one from Tamawa's mouth, one from Sei's. Tamawa didn't suspect anything. To him, it was just another checkup. On the way back, Sei bought him ice cream to distract him. The boy licked the cone happily, swinging his legs. "Daddy, when will we go to the park?" he asked again, his voice innocent and expectant. Sei's throat tightened. He forced a smile, reaching over to pat his son's head. "Next time, champ. I promise." The results would take weeks, and Sei hated waiting. But he had no choice. When he got home, he folded the hospital receipt neatly and buried it inside a brown envelope, hiding it deep in the back of his drawer like a dirty secret. Each morning, he woke up pretending nothing was wrong. Each evening, he still visited Amara and Tamawa, carrying on as if life was normal. He laughed when Tamawa made his silly jokes. He nodded and smiled when Amara updated him on her latest outings. But inside, his mind was on fire. Does she know? Did Amara lie to me all this time? Or was she just as uncertain as I am now? But he didn't ask. Not yet. Until the truth came in black and white. He played his role perfectly. Father, visitor, provider. No one suspected a thing. Only when he lay down at night did the question return. Heavy and suffocating. Is Tamawa truly mine? Secret nights in the midst of all this turmoil. Sei found himself drawn more and more to Zainab. At first, it was harmless, or so he told himself. He checked in on her occasionally, making sure she was adjusting well in her new apartment, making sure she had everything she needed as her pregnancy advanced. But those visits grew more frequent. He began bringing groceries, baby clothes, little things she never asked for. Sometimes he sat with her on the couch, listening as she talked about her fears, her regrets, her dreams for the future. Other times, they shared long silences that somehow felt comforting. Zainab, who had once carried shame like a cloak, began to feel human again. Sei's attention, his kindness, his presence. These things made her smile in ways she thought she had lost forever. Amara noticed Sei's divided attention but dismissed it, believing he was only helping Zainab out of guilt. What she didn't know was that Sei had begun spending nights at Zainab's place, giving excuses about late meetings and urgent work calls. It happened one rainy evening. Thunder rumbling in the distance. Sei stayed over again. Zainab, heavily pregnant yet glowing, lay on the bed beside him. The only sound in the room was the soft tapping of rain against the window. She turned to him, eyes shining with unshed tears. Sei, I feel so lonely. Please, just hold me. He hesitated, his pulse quickening. Zainab, no, it's not right. You're pregnant, and... But before he could finish, a tear slipped down her cheek. I just want to feel wanted again. I don't want to be alone anymore. Something inside him broke. He reached out, wiped her tears, and pulled her close. At first, it was just comfort. Then comfort turned to kisses. Kisses turned to fire. And fire consumed them both. That night, what began as a need for warmth became a night of passion. Despite her pregnancy, Zainab's body responded with hunger. She surprised him with her energy, her eagerness. They gave in to each other again and again, 3 times before dawn. Each time, she whispered his name through tears, clinging to him as if afraid he would vanish. Each time, he lost a little more of the guilt he thought would hold him back. When morning came, she lay beside him, a soft glow on her face. For the first time in months, she whispered, I feel alive again. Sei stared at the ceiling, conflicted, but deep down, he couldn't deny that he, too, had found peace in her arms. After that night, everything changed. He told himself it was a mistake, that it shouldn't happen again. But his body betrayed him. His heart betrayed him. He couldn't forget the way Zainab looked at him, the way she gave herself without pride, without conditions. He began calling her every morning, every night, sometimes just to ask how she was feeling, other times just to hear her voice. He missed her when he wasn't with her. Zainab, too, was transformed. The sadness that had once weighed her down seemed to lift. She smiled more. She hummed while cooking. Neighbors noticed her glow. Whenever Sei visited, she treated him with a tenderness that pierced his heart, something Amara hadn't given him in years. Where Amara's words were sharp, Zainab's were gentle. Where Amara criticized, Zainab encouraged. With her, he felt peace. The confession one evening, after hours of arranging baby clothes and fixing little things around her apartment, they ended up in bed again. The air between them was heavy with unspoken truths. After their heated lovemaking, Zainab turned to him, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his chest. Her voice was soft but bold. Sei, I love sex. I really do. I can't lie about that. Sometimes I wish I could have it every day. It makes me feel alive. Say froze, then laughed quietly, kissing her forehead. You're something else, Zainab. Finally, I've met someone who matches my energy. Her eyes widened, hopeful. You mean, you feel the same? Yes, he admitted, pulling her closer. With you, I don't have to hold back. You give me everything without making me feel guilty. I like that. Maybe too much. She blushed, shy but secretly thrilled. For the first time in her life, she felt not just wanted but truly valued. From that night onward, their bond deepened. It was no longer about obligation. Sei wanted to be there, and whenever he left, he missed her scent, her smile, her warmth. Meanwhile, Amara remained blind, chasing her own pleasures, unaware that the man she had taken for granted was slowly slipping into another woman's arms. The DNA truth then, one cool morning, Sei's phone buzzed. It was the hospital. Sir, the voice said, your DNA result is ready. You can come for collection. His heart skipped. For days, he had lived in restless anticipation. Now the truth was waiting in a sealed envelope. At the hospital, his palms were sweaty as he signed the papers. Sitting in his car, he tore the envelope open. His eyes scanned the page, his breath catching with every word. Paternity test result. Probability of paternity is 0%. Subject tested is not the biological father of the child. Sei's hands trembled. He pressed the paper against the steering wheel, his chest tightening until he could hardly breathe. Tears blurred his vision, but he didn't fight them. He broke down alone in his car. Years of sacrifice, loyalty, and silent endurance flashed before him like lightning. Tamawa was not his son. The first thought that stabbed through the fog of pain was bitter and sharp. Amara lied to me. She trapped me in a bond that was never mine. And the cruelest twist of fate? The true father was none other than Zainab's cousin, the very same man Sei had just met. The confrontation. Sei kept it bottled up for days. The DNA envelope burned in his mind like fire he couldn't quench. Every time Tamawa called him daddy, his chest tightened. Every time Amara smiled casually at him, guiltless, he felt his blood boil. He didn't tell her immediately. Instead, he walked around her like a shadow of himself. His voice was clipped, his smile strained. Amara noticed, but she dismissed it. She assumed it was just work pressure, maybe another contract stressing him. But Sei's silence wasn't work-related. It was betrayal eating him from within. Finally, one evening, he could no longer hold it in. He drove straight to her apartment, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. When Amara returned from her outing, her heels clicking against the tiled floor, her laughter still lingering from the conversation she had on the phone, she found him already seated in her living room. His shoulders hunched forward, his jaw clenched, and on the table before him was an envelope. She froze at the door. Sei, what are you doing here? He didn't answer. His eyes were hollow, piercing. The silence wrapped around the room like a noose. Amara dropped her purse on the couch, trying to sound calm though her chest tightened. You're scaring me. What's going on? Why are you here looking like this? When he spoke, his voice was low, but it carried a weight that silenced the air. Why did you lie to me, Amara? Her heart skipped. Lie? What do you mean? Why? He leaned forward, his hands pressing into his knees. Did you make me believe Tamawa was my son? Amara's world tilted. Her throat went dry instantly. Sei, what are you talking about? Of course, Tamawa is yours. Stop it. His voice cracked like thunder as his fist slammed against the envelope. The sound made her flinch. Don't you dare play games with me. I did a DNA test. He is not my son. The words sliced through her. Amara's mouth trembled. She took a shaky step forward, then back. No, Sei, it's not. It's not like that. Sei rose slowly, his eyes red, his voice breaking. This boy, the boy I have loved, raised, sacrificed everything for, he is not mine. He belongs to that man. The one you had a one-night stand with. Zainab's cousin. Her knees buckled. She tried to move closer, but he stepped back as if her touch would poison him. Tears rushed down her face. Say, I swear, I didn't plan it. It was a mistake. I didn't even know who the father was at first. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who cared. I thought, maybe it wouldn't matter. It matters. His roar shook the room. He clutched the paper in his hand, waving it like a weapon. It matters because you stole my truth. You made me carry a weight that wasn't mine. Do you know what that does to me? To him. Amara fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, please don't leave me, Say. Don't take Tamawa away. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. But his chest was heaving, his face twisted with rage and grief. He had nothing left to give her. Say's exit. She clung to him, her tears soaking through his shirt, her nails digging into his arms as if holding him physically would erase the truth. But Say peeled her hands away one by one. Don't touch me, Amara. You destroyed everything. His words were colder than the slam of the door as he stormed out. Amara collapsed to the floor, wailing. The sound of the door shutting echoed in her ears like the end of everything she thought she had. At Zainab's apartment, Say drove straight to Zainab's place, his mind spinning. He didn't even knock properly, just pushed the door open with trembling hands. Zainab came out of the kitchen, her round belly leading the way, her eyes wide when she saw him. Say, what happened? You look... Oh my God, you've been crying. He dropped heavily into a chair, both hands gripping his head. His voice was raw. Amara lied to me. Tamawa, he's not mine. He belongs to your cousin. Zainab froze. What? She rushed to sit. Are you sure? Please, Say. Tell me you're not just assuming. I did a DNA test. I have the result. I confronted her tonight. She admitted it. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. My own cousin? How could this happen? She leaned back, shaking, staring at the ceiling. The air between them grew heavy with disbelief. Finally, she whispered, Then I'll tell him. He must know. He must take responsibility, even if it's hard. He can't run from it. Say looked at her, broken. I don't even know what to do anymore, Zainab. That boy, I love him. But now, everything feels like a lie. She reached out gently, her hand brushing against his trembling fingers. You've been his father in every way that matters. That doesn't disappear because of a test. Amara's night of tears. Back at home, Amara couldn't sleep. Her sobs filled the empty house. She clutched her pillow, the silence pressing in like a punishment. In the middle of the night, Tamawa stirred. He walked into her room, rubbing his eyes. Mummy, why are you crying? Quickly, she wiped her face. I'm not crying, baby. I'm fine. But her voice shook. The little boy climbed into her lap, resting his head on her chest. Amara hugged him tightly, rocking him as tears rolled silently again. One night, one mistake, and now this boy is the evidence of a choice she could never erase. The meeting. The next morning, Say called. His tone was lifeless. Come to Zainab's place. We need to talk. Her heart pounded. When she arrived, she found him seated with Zainab and her cousin. The air in the room was suffocating. Zainab's cousin cleared his throat, his shame evident. Amara, Say told me everything. If Tamawa is mine, then I will take responsibility. But, his voice dropped. I am married. I have children. I can't be fully present in his life. But I won't abandon him. Whatever he needs, I'll provide. Amara covered her face, tears spilling. Say leaned forward, his tone steady but cold. From now on, I will still be in Tamawa's life, but not as his father. When he's old enough, we'll tell him the truth. Together. Until then, he deserves stability. Her voice cracked. I understand. I brought this on myself. The silence afterward was heavy. It wasn't peace. It was an agreement carved out of pain. Weeks later, time crawled. Amara threw herself into Tamawa, but guilt ate her alive. Sei visited still, but his warmth was gone. The cousin sent money, but kept his distance. Meanwhile, Zainab's pregnancy advanced. One evening, after helping her settle in bed, Sei looked around her modest apartment and sighed. You can't stay here when the baby comes. I've gotten a bigger place. Move in. At least until things settle. Zainab frowned. Sei, I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he said quickly. His eyes softened. You need safety, Zainab. And I need to know you're okay. She smiled faintly, touched. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. The night of blood. They had been living in the new apartment for weeks. Their bond grew. Shared meals, quiet conversations, laughter that softened the walls. Sei was becoming her anchor. Then came that night. Sei was half asleep when he felt her stir. He turned to see her face pale, her hands trembling. She pulled the blanket aside. Blood stained the sheets. Sei? Her voice cracked, weak with fear. His heart stopped. Oh my God, Zainab! He jumped up, fumbling for his keys. Within seconds, he was carrying her to the car. She clutched her belly, crying softly. Don't let anything happen to my baby. Please. His grip on the wheel tightened as he sped through the night. You'll be fine. Promise. Just hold on. The city lights blurred, his heartbeat racing faster than the car. But inside, he wasn't sure who he was trying harder to save. Zainab, the unborn child, or himself from breaking completely. At the hospital, doctors rushed her into the emergency ward. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant, but to Sei, it reeked of dread. He paced back and forth like a madman, his palms clammy, sweat trickling down his back even though the hospital's air conditioner hummed steadily. His lips moved ceaselessly, whispering prayers he hadn't uttered in years. God, please, please don't take them from me. Please save them. Please. Every minute stretched into an eternity. The beeping of distant machines, the hurried footsteps of nurses, the muffled voices behind closed doors. It all pressed on him, each sound reminding him that life and death were wrestling behind those walls. At last, the double doors creaked open. A doctor stepped out, his face grim. Sei's heart dropped. It's not yet her due date, the doctor said, his tone clipped but urgent. But the bleeding is severe. We have no choice, we need to remove the baby now. Prepare yourself, sir. Sei's lips parted, but no sound came. His throat tightened like a rope had been knotted inside it. He wanted to argue, to scream, to demand another way, but the words died in his chest. All he could do was nod, helpless, desperate, terrified. Inside, the theater time lost its meaning. Seconds dragged like years. Sei stood glued to the hallway, ears straining for any clue of what was happening inside. Then, suddenly, the doors swung open again. Nurses rushed out, carrying a tiny form wrapped in white cloth. So fragile, so impossibly small, yet alive. Sei's eyes widened, his chest rising with a shaky breath. He followed them with trembling steps as they placed the baby in an incubator. The sight was overwhelming. Tiny fingers curled tightly, tiny chest heaving unevenly. Every flicker of movement felt like a miracle. But even in that miracle, fear lingered. Where's Zainab? How is she? He demanded, his voice sharp with desperation. Calm down, sir. The doctors are still on her. One nurse muttered, not daring to meet his eyes. Sei turned back just in time to see his baby twitch weakly. And then, as if the fight had drained away, go frighteningly still. No, 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 what's happening? He shouted, lunging toward the incubator. His heart pounded against his ribs, frantic, wild. The doctors surrounded the incubator, their hands moving swiftly, their voices low and urgent. A hand grabbed Sei's arm, holding him back. He struggled, but the grip was firm. He could only watch, powerless, as moments stretched like knives slicing into his soul. Finally, one doctor turned to him, his eyes heavy with sorrow. I'm sorry, the baby didn't survive. The words struck like a hammer. Sei's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, his palms covering his face. The sound that escaped him was raw, guttural, almost inhuman. He cried like a child, loud, broken, helpless. Moments later, a nurse guided him gently into another room. Zainab was awake, her face pale, her lips dry, her body weak. But her eyes searched the room frantically the moment she saw him. "Where's my baby?" she whispered, her voice breaking before the words were fully formed. Say froze, his throat locked. How could he tell her? His silence stretched, but the tears that welled in his eyes betrayed him before his lips could move. Zainab's eyes widened, her lips trembling. "Don't tell me. Don't tell me." His faint nod was enough. Her cry pierced the air like glass shattering. She clutched her stomach, shaking her head violently. "No, no, my baby, my baby." The sound tore through Say's chest. He rushed to her side, pulling her into his arms. She buried her face against him, sobbing uncontrollably, her body trembling with grief. "I carried this child for months," she wailed. "Felt every kick, every movement, and now nothing?" Say's tears flowed freely. He stroked her hair, whispering broken words. "I'm sorry, Zainab. I'm so sorry." That night, the hospital felt colder than any place on earth. Zainab didn't sleep. Her eyes stared blankly at the space beside her bed, the space where her child should have been. Say stayed beside her, holding her hand tightly, as if his grip alone could keep her from slipping into despair. When she was discharged, Say personally carried her bags. He had already prepared a new apartment, quieter, warmer, safer, hoping it would be a fresh start. But Zainab moved slower now, weaker, her steps heavy with grief. Her once bright eyes seemed hollow, carrying an emptiness that no sunlight could fill. Say fussed over her gently, arranging her pillows, making her meals, reminding her to take her medications. Days blurred together. One afternoon, Amara visited. She entered with a solemn face, her eyes soft for once. She pulled Zainab into a hug. "I heard. I'm so sorry about the baby," she said, her voice low, almost sincere. "God knows best. Please take heart." Zainab gave a faint nod, forcing a quiet, "Thank you." But Amara's sharp eyes didn't miss the way Say hovered around, adjusting Zainab's seat, pouring her water, fussing over the smallest details. She noticed the tenderness in his every gesture, the quiet devotion in his eyes. When she was leaving, she asked Say to walk her out. The moment they stepped outside, her tone shifted. "So this is what you've reduced yourself to?" she sneered, folding her arms. "Out of all the women in this world, it's the housemaid you chose? No class, no standard. How shameless can you be?" Say said nothing, his lips pressed tight. "You think people won't talk? From boss to maid? Cheap. You disgust me, Say. Imagine living with her like a wife." Still, he remained silent, his silence louder than any defense. "Keep quiet then," she spat, "because you know I'm right. One day you'll regret this." She stormed off, her heels clacking like thunder. Say returned inside, smoothing his expression before Zainab could notice. He found her curled on the couch, her head resting weakly against the cushion. "Are you hungry?" he asked softly. She shook her head, but he still went into the kitchen to prepare something light. Every little act, cooking, cleaning, sitting by her bedside, was his silent vow to never let her feel abandoned. One evening, after tucking a blanket around her, Zainab caught his hand. Her eyes glistened. "Say, I don't know what I'd have done without you." His lips curved into a soft smile. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. "You're not alone, Zainab. You'll never be alone again." Her heart swelled. The man she once feared would discard her had become her strongest pillar. Slowly, she began to love him. Not just for his presence, but for his patience, his gentleness, his unwavering loyalty. New beginnings months rolled by. Healing was slow, but with Say's support, Zainab began to smile again. She laughed at his silly jokes, hummed softly while cooking with him, even dreamed of the future again. By the next year, their love had blossomed into something unshakable. So when Zainab discovered she was pregnant again, her joy overflowed. She broke the news to Say with trembling hands and teary eyes. His reaction was immediate. He swept her off her feet, tears brimming in his eyes. "This time," he whispered into her hair, "we're going to do it right. We'll raise this child together." Sei had been plotting something special. He wanted to give her a memory that would wash away her old wounds, a proposal that would crown their journey with hope. One afternoon, while chatting with Amara about family matters, he casually mentioned, "I think I'm ready to marry Zainab." Amara froze, then burst into laughter. "You? Marry your former maid? A beg? Say, stop joking." She waved dismissively, thinking it was a silly tease. Sei only smiled faintly, his silence hiding the truth. The surprise engagement weeks later, he organized a small dinner party under the guise of celebrating a work milestone. Zainab dressed simply, unaware of what awaited her. As the evening wound down, Sei tapped his glass. His voice grew steady. "Life has given me many chances, but none compares to the chance of loving you, Zainab." The lights dimmed. Soft music floated in the air. Then, before she could process what was happening, he went down on one knee, holding out a sparkling ring. "Will you marry me?" Gasps filled the room. Zainab covered her mouth, tears streaming freely. She shook her head in disbelief before whispering, "Yes, yes, Sei." Cheers erupted as he slipped the ring onto her finger. She clung to him, overwhelmed with gratitude and love. Wedding plans, the news spread quickly. Families were informed, dates picked, preparations made. Zainab, once the quiet girl in the shadows, was now a radiant bride-to-be. Together, she and Sei chose venues, colors, outfits, and guest lists. Their joy was contagious. Everyone could see they truly cherished each other. Amara's downfall when Amara received the invitation. Her hands trembled. The golden letters, Sei and Zainab, stabbed at her heart. She slumped on her couch, weeping bitterly. This was the man she once had, the man she lost through pride and carelessness. Now he was marrying the very woman she had mocked. Her own life was in shambles. Men came and went, using her, discarding her. None loved her. None stayed. Deep down, she knew why: her pride, her sharp tongue, her character. And now, the home she once dreamed of belonged to another woman. The wedding day, the hall glowed with joy. Sei, resplendent in his cream agbada, couldn't take his eyes off Zainab as she walked down the aisle in her flowing white gown. A murmur of delight filled the hall when little Tamawa, smartly dressed in his tiny suit, carried the rings with a proud grin. Vows were exchanged, promises sealed. Tears fell freely among guests as Sei kissed Zainab's hand and whispered, "Forever with you." Happily married life after the wedding was filled with laughter. Zainab gave birth to a healthy child, and their home rang with joy. Sei adored her, and she cherished him deeply. Every day she thanked God for second chances. As for Amara, she lived with regret. Sometimes she saw their pictures online. Sei smiling, Zainab glowing. She wept for what she had lost. But Zainab never looked back. She had survived shame, endured storms, and now she lived healed, loved, and fully cherished, married to the man of her dreams. Thanks for watching. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.